In the vast universe, where humanity is just a tiny part of the grand tapestry of life, mankind faces an unprecedented threat. A strange signal emerges from a distant place, and the journey into the deep space begins. Kai Lennox and his exploration team, now equipped with newfound strength, must confront an extraterrestrial force, the Devourers. A battle not only against destruction, but also against the very identity of humanity. Will they be able to protect the future, or will they be replaced by power and devastation? This journey begins right now. The strange signal from space. The story begins at Mira Colony, a human settlement located at the edge of space, millions of light years away from Earth. The space station here was designed to monitor and maintain automated systems, ensuring the stable operation and safety of the colony. Mira Station was always quiet, with minimal interference from the outside, except for receiving informational signals or data from nearby stations. Nothing was ever out of the ordinary, until one night. Kai Lennox, a young engineer working at the station's command center, was known for his patience and ability to find joy in solving difficult technical problems. However, that night, as he sat alone in front of the control panel, everything suddenly changed. Kai was relaxing with his tablet, indulging in a few games, when a strange signal appeared on the screen. At first, he thought it was just a minor technical issue, like many others before it. But when the signal persisted, it was clear this wasn't like any issue he had encountered before. Something on the control map seemed off. The signal emitted a strange series of sounds, like encoded messages that could not be immediately explained. Kai was puzzled, unable to understand why there was such a perfect repeat in the pattern. He turned up the volume on the device and plugged in his headset. The sound coming through the headphones seemed like a series of small beeps, almost like Morse code, but the rhythm was steady, not random. When the signal repeated for the third time, Kai felt an unusual tension. He couldn't explain why the signal was cycling in such a pattern, nor why it showed no signs of stopping. He pressed a few buttons on the control panel to check the system again. By this time, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Suddenly, a thought struck him. Could this be a malfunction in the system? Or could this be a signal from an extraterrestrial civilization? Unable to bear the growing unease, Kai decided to contact Captain Alara Soren, the commanding officer of the station, to report the situation. Alara was a calm and determined woman who always maintained her composure under pressure. She listened to Kai's report with keen attention and decided to convene an emergency meeting with the engineers and scientists. The entire team would carefully analyze and investigate the situation. "What could this be?" Alara asked, her voice laced with a hint of concern. "We must be cautious." A quick meeting was called, and the team discussed the signal, suspecting it could be a threat from extraterrestrial sources. Dr. Amelia Drake, the space scientist, suggested that the signal could be a form of communication from a distant civilization, or it could be a signal from a long-forgotten system in the universe. All of these hypotheses could be true, but nothing was clear. After a tense discussion, Alara ordered the exploration team to prepare for a journey to the source of the signal. She concluded that the only way to understand and uncover the true nature of the signal was to directly investigate its origin. Kai was selected as one of the explorers. He felt an indescribable emotion, both excitement and fear. Though he had always been ready for complex technical tasks, this was different. This wasn't a typical malfunction that could be fixed with his skills. They were about to leave the station and venture into uncharted space where no one had dared to go before. "We're about to enter a new world, one where no one has been before," Alara said, her eyes resolute. "Prepare yourselves, everyone. This may be a journey unlike anything we've ever experienced." Kai looked at the control panel where the signal continued to appear in its steady rhythm. He felt a sense of unease, but also couldn't deny the deep curiosity within him. Could this signal be a warning or a call from another civilization? Or perhaps it was a greater threat than humanity had ever imagined? The spaceship prepared for liftoff, and Kai, along with the exploration team, got ready to embark on a journey where the outcome was unknown. But one thing was certain: they would never return the same. And when this strange signal led them to an encounter with beings not of human origin, the fate of Mira Colony, and perhaps all of humanity, would change forever. The investigation. After the emergency meeting concluded, the exploration team began preparations for their journey. Kai Lennox, alongside Captain Alara Soren and the remaining members, boarded the spacecraft Aurora, ready to travel to the source of the mysterious signal. Although they had meticulously prepared for the mission, none of them could have predicted the unknowns that lay ahead. Kai sat alone in the spacecraft's control room, his fingers gliding over the screens as he checked the systems. Everything appeared to be stable, but a sense of unease was slowly building inside him. Though he had participated in countless technical missions, this was the first time he felt the kind of intense tension that gripped him now. Unlike typical expeditions, this journey could be the first step into something beyond humanity's understanding. The signal they received didn't seem to be a mere glitch. It was purposeful, either a message or a warning. As the Aurora began to leave the orbit of Mira Colony, the vastness of space stretched out before them. The silence was palpable, broken only by the hum of the ship's systems. Kai felt the subtle motion of the spacecraft as it moved further away from the world he knew, entering a realm full of mystery and potential danger. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. There was a sense of foreboding, yet an undeniable curiosity. Throughout the journey, Kai and his team had time to analyze the signal further. They weren't just examining the sounds and the encoding structure. They were also trying to understand why the signal had appeared in this specific region of space, and whether it had any connection to other events in humanity's history. Despite their best preparations, they couldn't help but feel that they were about to encounter something truly extraordinary. This signal wasn't just coming from a single point, it seemed to have spread across a vast area. Captain Alara Soren maintained her composure throughout the trip, but there was no hiding the uncertainty in her eyes. Trey, the team's electronics engineer, was the first to notice something unusual. He had been analyzing the data from the signal and realized that it had a unique pattern of repetition. It was unlike any natural signal they had encountered before. There was clear intention behind it, with each segment of the code seemingly deliberate. "This isn't just a malfunction, it's intentional," Trey commented as he adjusted the data analysis tools on the control panel. Meanwhile, Alex, the astrophysicist, was studying the surrounding space and its properties. He found something even more disturbing. The signal was coming from a location that didn't match any known celestial bodies. Despite their careful calculations of orbits and objects in the region, they found nothing that could have produced the signal. No planets, no comets, no asteroids. It seemed to be coming from an empty region of space, devoid of any identifiable source. After 3 days of travel, the Aurora came to a halt in a strange area. A massive spherical structure appeared before them, emerging from the darkness. Its metallic surface gleamed in the distant light, but there was no sign of any natural celestial object. The shape itself didn't resemble any known formation. As they approached, Kai noticed something odd. A small door was open on the surface of the structure. "I think we've arrived," Kai said, his voice contemplative but filled with awe. Alara didn't take her eyes off the observation screen. "We need to be cautious. This is no ordinary discovery." Kai slowly maneuvered the spacecraft closer to the strange object, trying to gather more details. A sudden beep broke the silencio, warning that they were entering a dangerous area. Yet, there were no signs of life around them. The vast space before them appeared utterly empty, with only the strange structure standing alone in the void. "Prepare yourselves," Alara ordered. "We need to go inside and investigate. This might be our only chance to understand the signal and discover what's truly waiting for us." The team members began to gear up, donning their protective suits and checking their equipment. Kai felt the unease in his chest, a cold shiver running down his spine as he stepped out of the ship. Trey double-checked the machinery one final time, while Alex recorded all the environmental data on their current trajectory. When the team stepped out of the spacecraft, the door to the structure opened as though welcoming them. The sound of their footsteps echoed in the still, silent space. Every step they took brought them closer to an enigma they could hardly comprehend. The atmosphere felt heavy, as if they were walking into something they could not fully grasp. None of them had any idea what was hidden behind that door, but they knew it would forever alter their perception of reality. This isn't just about exploring a new world, Alara spoke softly, yet her voice was resolute. We are delving into the very fabric of our existence. We must be prepared for anything. The team moved forward, each member carrying a sense of uncertainty, but also an undeniable curiosity. With every moment that passed, they felt as though they were approaching the precipice of something monumental. The structure stood before them, its silence more intimidating than any weapon could ever be. What awaited them beyond those doors, they could only imagine. But one thing was certain, their mission was no longer just about investigating a strange signal. They were on the brink of a discovery that could change the fate of humanity itself. The truth about the alien creatures. Inside the strange structure, the space expanded into dark corridors, covered in cryptic symbols and bizarre images that the exploration team couldn't yet decipher. Each of their footsteps echoed in the silent space, making the atmosphere heavier and filled with an unsettling feeling. Kai Lennox, along with Captain Alara Soren, Trey, and Alex, continued to move deeper into the structure, each of them feeling a strange compulsion, as if an invisible force was guiding them. As they advanced down the corridors, each section revealed rooms filled with odd, unidentifiable machinery and devices. The walls gleamed, but they didn't reflect light in any way humans understood. Kai felt as though he was stepping into a completely alien space, entirely different from anything he had ever seen. Everything around them seemed not to have been created by human hands, but instead was the product of an ancient civilization with technology far beyond humanity's imagination. When the team reached the heart of the structure, an odd sensation enveloped them. Trey, the technical expert, kept staring at the devices he couldn't explain. The technology appeared to have existed for thousands of years, yet it was too advanced to be understood in their current era. "This feels really strange," Trey said, his eyes still glued to the analysis screen. "Nothing in our database can compare to this." Kai nodded. He could feel it too. There was nothing but the structure and these devices around them, with no sign of life. No one had survived in this space. There were no traces of any civilization. But then, when they moved into a large room at the center, everything changed. In the middle of the room, there were several transparent pods, each containing humanoid figures. But the stark difference was their pale blue skin, no hair, and their eyes sealed shut. Their breathing wasn't detectable by the medical equipment, but as the exploration team drew closer, Kai felt a strange compulsion. One of the creatures inside the pod began to stir. It's waking up!" Alex yelled, his hand trembling as he pointed at one of the pods. The creature inside began to open its eyes. The light from the overhead lamps created a somber scene, and the creature's eyes were unlike any eyes humans had ever seen. They were pure white, with no pupils, as if they came from a world beyond their own. Are they still alive?" Alara asked, her voice filled with surprise and concern. The creature in the pod slowly sat up, its gaze cold and lifeless. But when it looked at Kai, a sudden change occurred. Its eyes shifted to a pale blue, as if recognizing the presence of humans. In that brief moment, it stared directly at Kai, then spoke in a language none of them had ever heard before. "You have arrived," the creature said, its voice faint, but carrying a chilling tone that made the group shiver. "We received your signal," it continued, its voice now clear in English, leaving everyone stunned. "We have been waiting for you." Kai stepped closer, his eyes filled with disbelief. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "We received the signal, but who are you? What are you?" The creature chuckled softly, its expression shifting to a serious one. "We are the Varric. We have existed long before humanity ever knew of this space. You received the signal because you are the species capable of fighting us." It pointed in a direction. "Those we call the Devourers will come. You will be the last hope of this universe." Ilara moved closer, her hand clenched tightly, her face full of skepticism. "The Devourers? Who are they? Why must we fight them?" The Varric shook its head, a fleeting moment of fear passing in its eyes. "They are creatures that have destroyed many civilizations. They corrode planets, eradicate all life forms, and nothing can stop them until humanity appeared." The Varric's words left the team silent. They couldn't comprehend what they had just heard. Everything they thought they knew about the universe and life on other planets had now changed. A much larger battle was beginning, and humanity would have to rise to face it. The Organization of Species. In the quiet, eerie space of the alien structure, Kai Lennox and the exploration team continued to listen to Varric's explanation. Each word from this creature revealed more secrets about the universe that humankind had never known. From the vague memories of human space wars, they now faced a darker reality than they could have ever imagined. The creatures known as the Devourers were not ordinary threats, but apocalyptic beings that had consumed millions of civilizations. And humanity, with its ability to survive in harsh environments, was the key to combating them. Varric continued explaining the history of its species and the events that had unfolded thousands of years ago. "We are creatures created for a single purpose," Varric said, its voice cold but tinged with sadness. "We were not made to rule, but to protect. Every civilization before us attempted to resist the Devourers, but all failed. We are the last survivors, and we have lived in the shadows for centuries, waiting for you." The exploration team stood in silence, unable to fathom that a creature resembling a human had such a tragic and painful mission. Kai struggled to grasp everything Varric was saying. He realized that this battle was not just between humanity and the Devourers, but also a struggle for the survival of a civilization that had once hoped and had been destroyed. "Then why are we here?" Ilara asked, her voice full of skepticism. "If you've known about this threat for so long, why didn't you act sooner?" Varric lowered its head, as though not wanting to face the question. "We could do nothing. Creatures like the Devourers cannot be defeated by conventional weapons. They know no fear, and they have developed abilities that even the most advanced civilizations cannot combat. There is only one way to fight them: change humanity." Kai furrowed his brow. "Change us? You want us to become like you?" "No," Varric immediately responded. "We cannot turn you into a version of ourselves, but we can help you unlock your full potential. You evolved on a planet full of danger. Humanity has proven that you have the ability to endure and rise above all obstacles. That is why you are the last hope of the universe." A heavy feeling settled over the entire team. Kai glanced at his teammates. What Varric had just said was beyond imagination, and if it was true, they were standing before a mission of immense importance. But could humanity truly have the strength to face an ever-growing, unstoppable force? "We need to understand more about this process," Alex said, his eyes lighting up as though he had found an answer in his mind. "So you mean we'll have to change biologically to fight the Devourers, right?" Varric nodded. "Exactly. You will need to improve your genes. We have researched and developed a process that can help humanity become stronger, better adapted to conditions you've never imagined. But you will have to sacrifice a part of your identity." The team fell silent, each member lost in thought. Kai felt an internal conflict. He had grown accustomed to life as a normal human, but if this was the only way to protect his world, would he accept the change? Ilara placed her hand on her forehead, thinking for a moment before speaking. "If we don't change, will we be able to win?" Varric didn't answer immediately. It looked into the eyes of each team member as if reading their thoughts. "We have no other choice. You will not just fight for yourselves, but for all the civilizations in the universe." Finally, Kai spoke up. "We can't let our world be destroyed. If we must change to save the future, then we will do it. But first, we need to fully understand all the risks and benefits of this change." Trey stepped forward, moving closer to Varric. "If we agree, will we start the genetic enhancement process immediately?" Varric nodded, its bright white eyes glinting with a hint of hope. "We will begin as soon as you are ready." In the silence of the room, the exploration team realized that what they were about to do would change everything. This was not just a battle to protect humanity, it was a battle to protect everything they had ever known. And with every decision they made, they would face greater questions about identity, humanity, and their own survival. Preparing to face the enemy? After the tense conversation with Varric, the exploration team realized they were standing at a monumental crossroads. Kai Lennox felt as if he were standing on the boundary between two worlds, between life and death, between humanity's essence and the incomprehensible. The genetic enhancement process, although potentially giving humanity the ability to fight the Devourers, was a profound change that could alter the very nature of who they were. Would they accept this trade-off to secure the future, or would they find another way to fight? After returning to the Aurora spacecraft, the team gathered to discuss their next steps. Captain Alara Soren looked at the team members, her expression serious. "This decision can't be made by just one person. We're a team, and we must all agree. What do you think about altering our genes?" Trey, the team's engineer, was the first to speak. "I'm not opposed to genetic enhancement. In fact, I think it's the only way if we want to survive. But I am also concerned about the long-term consequences. Changing our genes could create unforeseen side effects. Once we change, there's no turning back." Alex, the astrophysicist, nodded but had his own concerns. "Right. Trey makes a good point. But we also need to remember that we are facing an enemy that is not just strong, but incredibly intelligent. The Devourers can adapt to every weapon we use. If we don't change, we will be prey." Kai sat silently, his gaze shifting toward the vast emptiness of space outside the window of the spacecraft. He knew that if they decided to go through with the genetic enhancement, it would be more than just a physical change. It would fundamentally alter how they viewed themselves. Once they became stronger, would they still be human? Would they lose everything that made them who they were? "Perhaps we need to make a sacrifice," Kai spoke up, breaking the silence. "If humanity is to survive and fight for the future, maybe we will have to give up something. But I want everyone to understand that this isn't just about fighting. We are gambling with our very identity." Ilara looked at Kai, her eyes both stern and full of hope. "I understand, Kai, but if we don't change, humanity won't have a chance. The Devourers won't spare us." The team exchanged glances, with no one speaking further. Everyone understood that this was a pivotal moment. Their decision would not only affect the fate of Mira Colony, but also the future of all humankind. Since discovering the existence of the Devourers, everything had changed. What had begun as a mission to explore a strange signal had turned into a battle for survival. The challenges they faced were not just military but biological, as they had to confront the possibility of altering their very genetic makeup. The question now was whether humanity could maintain its essence, or if they would become something entirely different in the fight against this alien force. Dr. Amelia Drake, the head of the genetic enhancement process, had prepared everything for the daunting task ahead. "We'll need a lot of data to make this work. The process won't be easy, and there's no guarantee everyone will survive. But this is the only path we can take." Kai and the other team members began mentally preparing for the genetic alteration. They knew they would face a terrifying trial. Each one of them had to ask themselves whether they could endure this process and whether they could accept a future beyond their control. A week later, with everything set up, Kai was the first to enter the laboratory. He felt an unfamiliar emotion as he gazed at the devices around him. Dr. Amelia Drake and her team had everything ready, and Kai would be the first to undergo the genetic enhancement procedure. He took a deep breath, trying to calm the fear welling up inside him. He knew that once the process was completed, nothing would ever be the same. "Kai, if you're ready, we can begin," Amelia said, her voice low but firm. She placed a comforting hand on Kai's shoulder. "We'll do everything we can to ensure your safety." Kai nodded, looking at his teammates before stepping into the genetic enhancement device. He didn't know what would come next, but he knew one thing for certain: humanity's fight had only just begun. The first assault. After a week of intense preparation, the genetic enhancement process was completed. Kai Linux, along with the members of the exploration team, had now undergone biological changes. The improvements in physical strength, endurance, and recovery made them formidable warriors. However, these changes also left an unsettling feeling within them. They were no longer the same humans. Their bodies had been altered to become efficient tools for fighting the Devourers. But was this change truly worth it? Kai stood in front of the mirror in the locker room, observing himself. The scars on his body had disappeared, his muscles had grown stronger, and he could feel power flowing from within. Yet, in his eyes, there was still worry. Was he still himself? Could everything he had once been, the memories, the emotions, be replaced by this newfound strength? He tried to push those questions aside, but the unease lingered. Alara walked into the locker room, looking at Kai and the others as they prepared. "Are you all ready?" she asked. Her voice didn't carry urgency, but there was a clear determination behind it. No one in the team could answer immediately. They all understood that, despite the changes, despite the new strength they had, the real test had yet to begin. The first assault from the Devourers had arrived. They discovered that an invasion fleet from the Devourers was heading toward Mira Colony with massive warships that looked like living creatures. They weren't typical spaceships, but rather bizarre, almost biological battleships, with smooth, reflective surfaces that hinted at alien life. "This isn't a typical invasion," Trey said as he reviewed the technical data and signals gathered from the monitoring systems. "We're dealing with a form of biological weaponry. These warships can heal themselves as if they're alive." Ilara turned back to face her team, her gaze full of seriousness. "Are you ready to fight? Today is not just about a battle with an enemy, it's a fight for survival. We have to win, or humanity will be wiped out." The Aurora spacecraft was ordered to move into combat orbit. Kai and the remaining team members boarded the combat section of the ship. The physical changes and new strength gave them more confidence, but they knew everything came with a price. This was their first real battle since the genetic enhancements, and no one knew what would happen. They had been trained to fight, but this was a real battle, where each decision could determine their survival. As Aurora approached the battlefield, Kai could see the massive warships of the Devourers moving through space. Humanity's ships were well prepared, but facing the enemy, they still felt an overwhelming sense of unease. This was the first time they were up against a real assault by the Devourers. Both Kai and Alara knew that not only their lives, but the future of humanity rested in their hands. When the battle began, Kai felt a powerful surge of energy flow through his body. The genetic enhancements allowed him to move faster, fight harder, but it also made him feel like a fighting machine, lacking the emotions of a human. He couldn't help but think about the days before the battle started, when he was just an engineer with normal hopes and dreams. But now, he had to be a warrior, and that was the only thing humanity could hope for. The battle raged on, and Kai realized that the Devourer's strength was not easily defeated. Their warships had the ability to heal after each strike, and humanity's weapons seemed to have no effect on them. Alara ordered the team to coordinate their efforts, using continuous attacks and avoiding direct confrontations. During the fight, Kai noticed a weakness in the Devourer's actions. Although they were incredibly strong and agile, they still hadn't fully grasped humanity's tactics. Kai and Alara began to work together, using surprise attacks and constant changes in direction to confuse the enemy and make them lose their bearings. Despite fighting in harsh conditions, Kai felt a change within himself. The physical improvements made him stronger, but they also made him feel disconnected from who he once was. He started to realize that victory didn't come just from physical strength. It came from intellect, from creativity, and from the blend of tactics and survival instincts. Finally, after a long and brutal battle, Kai's team managed to defeat the first invading fleet of the Devourers. The enemy warships were destroyed and wiped out, but the cost was high. Both Kai and Alara knew this was just the first step in a much bigger war, and they couldn't relax just yet. The true threat was still ahead. Psychological changes. After the first battle with the Devourers, both Kai Linux and the exploration team felt exhausted and mentally drained. Although they had won, the victory hadn't come easily. Each member of the team carried not only physical wounds but also a profound psychological shift. The genetic enhancements they had undergone didn't just change their bodies. They also affected the way they thought and felt about the world around them. Kai felt alien to himself. The newfound strength and agility made him feel as if he were a combat machine, no longer a human being. Every decision he made was now driven by the changes within his body, a powerful urge to act swiftly, with no time for deep reflection as he once had. Kai began to feel a vast distance between himself and the people around him. Was he still the same person, or had he become someone else? A warrior without emotion. When he looked at Alara, Kai noticed a distinct change in her too. She had always been steadfast and decisive, but now there was something different in her eyes. Something had changed within her, and Kai realized that Alara was facing a bigger psychological challenge than ever before. Despite being their leader, she too had to confront doubts and concerns about the changes in her own body. One evening, after everyone had rested from the battle, Kai decided to step outside and look at the vastness of space. He stood alone on the ship's deck, gazing at the distant stars, and wondered what humanity would face in the coming battles. He wondered if they could maintain their humanity while fighting such a powerful foe like the Devourers creatures, who not only possessed physical strength, but also terrifying intellect. "We're changing, but will we still be ourselves after all of this?" Kai whispered to himself, his voice soft in the silent void. A deep sense of unease overtook him, as if he were standing at a crossroads in his life. Alara stepped out and stood next to him, looking toward the stars. "How do you feel?" she asked, her voice gentle but filled with concern. Kai turned to her, his eyes filled with emptiness. "I don't know anymore. We've changed, not just physically but mentally. How do you feel?" Kai asked in return. Alara didn't answer immediately. She looked out into space, as if searching for answers in the distant stars. "I feel like I've become something else. We can't go back to how we were, can we?" She sighed. "We've changed to fight, but will we still hold on to what makes us human?" Kai didn't know how to respond. He realized that both of them were grappling with the same questions, but there were no clear answers. The Devourers weren't just a physical threat. They were a mental challenge, posing the question of whether humanity could hold on to its identity and core values when faced with supernatural and brutal trials like this. The battle with the Devourers wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a battle against themselves for the exploration team. Kai understood that this war would not only test their physical strength but also their psychological endurance. Each member of the team would have to face inner conflicts, mixed emotions, and fundamental questions about the purpose of their lives. The next day, as Kai and Alara continued discussing strategy, Trey and Alex joined the conversation. Trey, who was always calm and logical, shared his thoughts on the changes. "We've become stronger warriors, but we can't let that blind us. Strength is only part of the battle. The important thing is that we stay true to our purpose and ideals." Alex nodded, looking at Kai and Alara. "I agree. No matter how much we change, we need to remember why we're fighting. We're not just fighting to survive, we're fighting to protect the values we believe in. Kai felt a sense of comfort in his teammates' words. He realized that, although change was inevitable, they could still hold on to their belief in themselves and in humanity's ideals. To win this war, they would need more than just physical strength. They would need unity, wisdom, and a deep faith in the core values of humankind. That night, Kai didn't feel as alone as he had before. He understood that, no matter how much they changed, they were still human beings with worthwhile goals and values. And, no matter how difficult this fight became, they would not give up. The inner conflict and the question of sacrifice. The battle with the Devourers raged on with unrelenting intensity. Although humanity had gained physical improvements through the genetic alteration process, Kai Lennox and his exploration team realized that these changes were not just physical upgrades, but psychological trials they had to face. Each passing day, the emotional conflicts within them grew stronger, making them question their own nature. Despite winning several battles against the Devourers, each victory came at a steep price. Kai could feel the changes in his body. His strength and combat abilities had reached a level he had never imagined. Yet that did not help him escape the feeling of alienation from himself. He distinctly felt that this power not only made him stronger, but also made him feel like he was becoming something else, no longer human. One evening, after a brutal battle, Kai sat alone in the command room of the Aurora. The dim light from the screens illuminated his face, but he couldn't escape the feeling of loneliness. He wondered if the victories they had won were truly worth it. Were all the sacrifices, the endless battles, leading to a better future for humanity? It was only when he heard footsteps behind him that Kai realized he wasn't alone. Ilara Soren, the team leader, stood beside him. She looked at him for a moment before speaking in a calm but resolute voice. "Kai, I know what you're thinking. That feeling of being lost, of feeling like we've lost a part of ourselves. I feel it too, but we don't have any other choice." Kai turned to look at Ilara, his eyes reflecting confusion. "Are you sure? Are you sure we're doing the right thing? I feel like I'm becoming a different person. This power, these changes in my body, are we still ourselves?" Ilara sat down beside him, her gaze fixed on the vastness of space outside the window. "I understand how you feel. We've changed so much, not just physically, but mentally as well. But we are still human, Kai. We still have our values and ideals. Those things will never change, no matter what we become." Kai fell silent, contemplating Ilara's words. He knew that the genetic changes they had undergone were not just to make them stronger, they were a part of adapting to the war humanity had to fight. However, he still couldn't shake the anxiety about the price they were paying. Was this power the cost of humanity losing its identity? The inner conflict within Kai continued to grow. A part of him wanted to keep fighting, keep winning, but another part couldn't escape the thoughts about what they had sacrificed. Ilara noticed the hesitation in his eyes and gently placed her hand on his shoulder. "Kai, I understand how you feel, but remember, we are not just fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for those we love, for the future of humanity. No matter what we have to sacrifice, we must keep going." Ilara's words were a great comfort to Kai, but he still couldn't shake the questions that lingered in his heart. Were these sacrifices truly worth it? Could they win without losing their humanity? The physical changes were necessary, but did they mean humanity would lose its most basic qualities? Kai turned back to Ilara, and in their eyes, he saw understanding and determination. They weren't just people fighting, they were warriors born from a great civilization, carrying the responsibility to protect the world they loved. They had to keep fighting, not for themselves, but for what they represented. Kai realized that this war was not only about survival, but also about holding on to their belief in themselves and the ideals they had sacrificed everything to protect. "We can't go back, but we can keep moving forward, holding on to our ideals," Kai said, finally finding peace within himself. Ilara smiled, her eyes filled with unwavering determination. That's right, Kai. We are human, and we will never give up. From that moment on, Kai understood that no matter how much they changed, they would continue to fight. They fought not only for themselves, but for the values and ideals they had chosen to protect. The difficult decisions ahead would test them, but Kai knew that only through belief in the future and unity could they win. The end in humanity's transformation. After countless battles and months of relentless tension, Kai Linux and his exploration team had finally reached a decisive point. Although they had fought with all their strength, the sacrifices they had made were far from trivial. The war against the Devourers was not simply a fight for survival, but a battle to preserve the identity and ideals of humanity. Kai stood in front of the window of the spacecraft, gazing into the vastness of the universe. The twinkling stars illuminated the dark, silent expanse. A strange sense of peace washed over him, yet he knew the battle was far from over. A part of him felt relieved to have overcome the challenges, but another part felt heavy. The changes in his body, the things he had sacrificed, made him feel like he was no longer himself. He couldn't deny that the genetic enhancements had given him superior strength, but it also made him feel as though he was losing the fundamental human values he once held dear. At that moment, Alara Soren entered the command room, her eyes filled with determination. Kai, I know what you're thinking. We've all changed, but this fight is not just about us. It's about what we can protect and preserve. Kai turned to look at her, his eyes filled with deep contemplation. And what about us? Are we still human? That question wasn't just his own self-doubt, it was a question for all of humanity as they faced a world they couldn't control, a future they couldn't predict. Alara smiled faintly, but in her eyes, there was an unwavering resolve. We are still human, Kai. Change may make us stronger, but the values we carry in our hearts are what keep us true to ourselves. We can change our bodies, but our ideals and hearts will never change. Alara's words made Kai feel as though a weight had been lifted from his heart. He understood that change was a part of evolution, and humanity could not only survive but grow stronger with every challenge. The fear inside him gradually gave way to a firm belief in the path ahead. Soon after, the exploration team received a signal from Mira Colony, the place where the life and death battle against the Devourers was still ongoing. Kai and Alara, along with the other team members, had already prepared for the final battle. Everyone had changed, but not all changes were just physical. This battle wasn't just about defeating the enemy, it was about protecting the values humanity had fought so hard to preserve. As the Aurora approached the combat zone, they saw the massive warships of the Devourers surrounding Mira Colony. Humanity's ships had been upgraded and meticulously prepared, but Kai knew that victory wouldn't come just from strength, it would come from unity and intelligence. That was humanity's true strength, its ability to overcome adversity and change to become stronger while never losing its core values. Alara stood at the command table, looking at the screen where humanity's warships were poised for battle. This is the decisive moment. We are ready. Kai looked around, seeing his teammates, those who had fought alongside him through countless hardships. They all had wounds, they all had changed, but in their eyes, he saw an unbreakable resilience. They were not just warriors, they were people who carried the belief in a future, in a world they would protect. When the battle began, Kai felt the newfound strength coursing through his body. He moved swiftly, but at the same time, he felt that the human parts of him were still intact. The Devourers might be powerful, they might be dangerous, but they could not defeat humanity, not just through strength, but through willpower and determination. The battle raged on for hours, and in the moments of intense pressure, Kai realized that victory wasn't just about defeating the enemy, it was also about overcoming oneself. They had changed, but they were still human, with courage and unwavering resolve. When the battle ended, Kai stood on the ship's deck, looking out into the vastness of space. Alara stood beside him, her eyes focused ahead, where Mira Colony shone under the light of the stars. "We've won, Kai, but this is just the beginning," Alara said, her voice steady, but her eyes filled with hope. "We will always keep fighting to protect the values we believe in. That is the true battle." Kai nodded, offering a faint smile. He understood that no matter how much they had changed, humanity would always fight for their beliefs and ideals. And no matter how long the battle took, they would never give up. The war humanity faces has never been an easy one. From the first days when the strange signal appeared on the Mira colony's control panel, to when Kai Linux and his exploration team confronted challenges beyond their comprehension, they have fought not only against an alien enemy, but also against profound questions about the essence of their humanity. Genetic enhancements made them stronger, but they also forced them to confront inner conflicts. Can humanity retain what defines its identity when faced with a threat beyond their control? Is victory a trade-off of self, or will humanity hold steadfast to its core values? These questions have always lingered in the minds of each warrior, each individual, as they entered this war. And then, after fierce battles, after countless sacrifices, Kai realized one thing. This war was not just about survival, it is about what we represent. Values that cannot be stripped away, ideals that cannot be replaced. Although the Devourers were defeated, although the victory had been earned, that was just the beginning. As Kai gazed at the vast universe, he realized that humanity was not only fighting to survive, but to protect what they believe in, to preserve the values that made them human. And in the most intense moments, they found strength not just from physical power, but from courage, intellect, and determination. Today, humanity has overcome its greatest challenge in history, but the war is not over. This universe is vast, filled with dangers, and humanity will always stand firm as warriors who fight not only for survival, but for the values that define them. Even if it means changing, even if it means sacrificing, they will always rise to protect life, ideals, and the future. And in the next journey, they will never give up. For in this universe, where countless dangers and darkness loom, humanity will be the ever-burning torch that never fades. Thank you for following the journey of Kai Linux and his exploration team. The battle is not just against an alien enemy, but also a battle within themselves, with questions about survival, the essence of humanity, and unchanging values. We will always remember that no matter how much we change, what we fight for will endure forever.